For those of you unfamiliar how this works, every year I go through the 5,000 articles published on human nutrition so you don't have to. Every year the talk is brand new because every year the science is brand new. I then compile all the most interesting, the most groundbreaking, the most practical results into a quiz show format. In a few moments I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. We'll play a few games. If you get the answer right, you get to remain standing. If you get the answer wrong, you need to sit down. And we'll keep going to see who the last person is standing. The prize this year is a new CD-ROM I created containing 1,000 of the latest, greatest scientific articles on nutrition, your own personal nutrition library on a disc. Any questions before we begin? It's time for the USDA Parasite game. Every year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture tests our retail meat and our animals, see how infested our animals are with these parasites. And it's up to you to guess just how infested. Greater than 50% or less than 50%. First up, detection of Sarcocystis parasites in retail beef. This is what it looks like actually in the meat. And then this is under a microscope cut cross-sectionally so you can see what you may be eating. Okay, greater than 50%, less than 50%, what do you think?
Greater than.
We think a greater than?
Greater.
We got a greater?
Greater.
3 graders, and 3, let's see. Parasites, they fed beef to dogs, and parasites were excreted by nearly every dog-fed beef samples originating in the United States, suggesting near universal infection. True prevalence, 95%. Definitely greater than 50%, still in the game, very nice. Next, lamb chops. Okay, the prevalence of the parasite toxoplasma isolated from lambs destined for human consumption in the United States of America. So the hearts of 383 lambs were obtained on the day of killing. And so for those of you who think, USDA doesn't have a heart, bullshit, they got 383. Anyway, all right, what do you think? Greater than 50% or less than 50%? Let's start over here this time. We'll come back to you. It's okay. What do you think? We got a greater? We got a greater. They're going greater. I don't know. Okay, we got 3 graders, and thankfully, 3 wrong answers. Only 1 in 6. Only 1 in 6 lambs are infected. But the bad news is that 10% of the American population is infected with this brain parasite, which means that probably a few people in this room actually have a battle going on inside your skulls between this toxoplasma brain parasite and your immune systems. And it's been linked to bipolar, Parkinson's, and schizophrenia. But most people's immune systems can keep it at bay, but should your immune system start to slip and you're infected, it can travel from your brain into your eye, infect the back of your eyeball. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in the brain of an adult. You get these lesions. And this is what it looks like. This is what this parasite does to the brains of our children. Pregnant women in particular should not be eating undercooked meat. But let me just address the safety of properly cooked meat. Last year, a novel method was found for the detection of fecal residue on poultry carcasses by using this fancy technique. In a processing plant, a metal hook is used to gut, to pull out the intestines. And so commonly the skin on chickens is contaminated by ruptures of the digestive tract during the evisceration process that can expel what they call internal content. Internal content which can end up on the carcass but be picked up by this laser scanning. So, what percentage of U.S. chicken carcasses is contaminated with fecal matter?
100%.
92%. I mean, come on. So 92%. So 9 carcasses out of 10 has this fecal matter. See, that's the problem with. See, at least with pigs and cows, people don't eat the outside of them. But see, the problem with eating chickens and fish is by eating the skin itself, you're much more likely to get this kind of fecal contamination. Don't try this at home. Okay, that's why people need to cook the crap out of it, literally. But 70 years ago, Swedish researchers found that if you fed roasted horse muscles to mice, they came down with cancer. We now know what this cancer-producing substance is. It's called the heterocyclic amine, according to the National Cancer Institute. These heterocyclic amines are carcinogenic chemicals formed from the cooking of mussels, such as mussels of fish or chickens, turkeys, pigs, cows, formed from the building blocks of the mussel itself when exposed to high temperatures. We're talking barbecuing, grilling, frying, that kind of thing. 17 different such heterocyclic amines have since been identified, and if you're a speed reader, you can see that those people eating medium well-done meat actually have significantly higher cancer rates than people eating medium rare meat because of these cooked meat carcinogens. But you know, you're really not supposed to eat rare meat anymore because of the risk of food poisoning. So you're kind of like, you know, cancer or E. coli. You know, the traditional target of these cooked meat carcinogens has been breast cancer. But we now know that these cooked meat chemicals are neurotoxic as well. So researchers last year looked at meat consumption and something called essential tremor, which is one of the most common neurological conditions in the world. You'll see, I saw someone in the subway this morning, they kind of go like this, starts in the hands, usually in people's 40s, but they can actually spread to the rest of the body, become quite debilitating, and we never knew what caused it. Until now, at least for men. Men were the only ones studied in the study. Men eating the most meat in this study had over 20 times the odds of coming down with this neurological condition for the rest of their lives. Now, just to illustrate how dramatic that is, a 20-fold increase in risk is if you a pack-a-day smoker for 20 years, your risk of getting lung cancer is only 13 times that of a lifelong non-smoker. So you smoke literally 100,000 cigarettes, 13 times more likely to get disease, but eat a lot of meat and 20 times more likely to get this neurological condition. In the United States, though, it's really the children that actually have the highest levels in their bodies, probably because they're just so small, and these cooked meat chemicals may play a role in our childhood asthma epidemic as well. Two things seem to do it: smoking in the home and this grilled meat intake. So they recommend, public health authorities say, look, two things: no smoking in the home when there's children, and also reduce the intake of grilled meat by children so as to reduce their exposure to these carcinogens. Now, warnings about meat in general kind of vague. Where are these carcinogens found the most? Let's get everybody up to answer this. Are we talking a Whopper, a Big Mac, pan-fried chicken, lamb chop, pork chop, grilled salmon? Who thinks it's a flame-broiled burger? Raise your hand. Who thinks it's pan-fried burger? Who thinks it's the chicken breast? Who thinks it's the lamb chop, pork chop, grilled salmon? Grilled salmon, good guess. But beating out even grilled salmon, number 2, chicken, in terms of carcinogenic contamination.
Not everybody on that.
Very nice. Look at this. All right. Now, chickens aren't the only things that are roasted, though. What about coffee beans?
Yeah.
But since the carcinogen is made from mussels, and there are no mussels in coffee, there is only very insignificant quantity. So one doesn't have to worry about coffee. And they deep fried a tempeh burger, a veggie burger, and found 0 mutagenicity, no carcinogens found, again, because it's not mussel meat and the carcinogens actually come from the mussel itself. Okay, so it's the chicken that's really the number 1, but which chicken? This is going to be a toughie, but researchers went to California, went to McDonald's, Burger King, all these other restaurants, got their grilled chicken entree, salad, sandwich, whatever. 100 samples found carcinogens in every single one of them, these heterocyclic amines, but which one took the cancer cake? Was it Applebee's, Burger King, Chick-fil-A, Chili's, McDonald's, Outback Steakhouse, or TGI Fridays? I would not have known this, but let's give it a try. Okay, thinking hats. Okay, where are we going?
I don't know.
I don't know either, but
Yes. I think Fridays.
any help? Anyone want to shout out?
Burger King.
We got Applebee's. Okay, we'll come back to you. What do you think over there?
Burger King.
Burger King.
Fridays.
TGI Friday.
TGI Friday.
Outback.
We have McDonald's.
Outback.
Outback. We got an Applebee's. And another Applebee's. And we have a winner. Unbelievably. This is a toughie. Way above the other ones. It turns out to be that Cobb salad at TGI Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
I don't actually have to leave now, do I?
Really off the charts for whatever reason. All right, now, to avoid the cancer or E. coli conundrum, one could ask a restaurant to instead boil or steam their meat, kind of lower temperature cooking methods, but they still have to handle it correctly. Many of you have seen, so this is just a recommendation. Oh, I'll go back for a second. Oh, no. Sorry. But this is the summary of the study, just saying obviously simple steps, such as reducing or avoiding the consumption of grilled chicken products. That's the strategy to reduce your intake of carcinogenic or mutagenic toxins. You have seen these. So even if they boil or steam your meat, they still have to handle the meat correctly. All right, well, researchers at the University of Iowa sent trained observers into 16 restaurants in the Midwest to see how well our food service personnel, how often and how well they washed their hands as they prepared our food. How did they do? Let's get everybody up to find out. Now note, this is compliance with the Federal Food Code guidelines, which are actually really quite strict. Like, you're supposed to wash your hands technically between moving from one food to another. So from like meat to making a salad, you're supposed to wash your hands. So, I mean, it's hard to get 100%. At the same time, they had someone with a clipboard looking over their shoulder the whole day. So what do you think? Did they wash their hands 0 to 20% of the time? Who's pessimistic? Raise your hand. 0 to 20. Who thinks, okay, not that bad. 20 to 40. 40 to 60. 60 to 80. And anyone have 80 to 100? Anybody? No. All right, well, you're right. It's not 80 to 100. But it's not 60 to 80 or even 40 to 60.
I think it's 0.
Ready for this? Oh! Thus, there was 0% compliance. 0% compliance with the recommendation for hand washing procedures.
Question.
Yes?
Did the workers know what they were being watched for, or was just a random person with a clipboard?
Random person with a clipboard.
Okay.
So then you definitely don't have to wash your hands. Okay, what if we do it ourselves though, right? From the meat counter straight to our home in a biohazard suit, dropped straight into boiling water, no cross-contamination in the kitchen. In fact, what if it's even the most contaminated food? Fish is second only, chicken is second only to fish in terms of food poisoning risk. So what if it's even fish, but it's handled and cooked properly? Fact or fiction? You can't get food poisoning from properly handled and cooked fish. Now, you can get all sorts of food poisoning from raw fish, for example. 85% of sushi, of fish fillets contaminated with fecal bacteria because of the gut waste exposed during evisceration in the slaughter process. You can get cholera from oysters. In fact, there's a new strain of cholera in North America as of last year. You can get tapeworms and other delights and parasites from sushi, including brainworms and eye worms. I will spare you the photo of the eye worm. And then these necrotizing infections, so people eating oyster, shellfish, other seafood, the so-called flesh-eating bacteria. The immediate limb amputations were performed on all patients. Still, 37% of them died. But what if you cook out the crab? Right? Now, this is only in terms of food poisoning, not the kind of long-term issues like PCBs and mercury and all that stuff, but acute food poisoning from properly cooked and handled fish. Who says you can't get food poisoning? Fact. Raise your hand. Who says fiction? right? And it turns out some of the most common causes of fish-borne food poisoning not affected by cooking at all. 50,000 people a year get poisoned by a neurotoxin in tropical fish like red snapper, sea bass, grouper, who themselves eat fish that eat a little toxic algae, can cause all sorts of weird reactions, like a reversal of hot and cold sensations. Hot feels like cold, cold feels like hot. And the toxin itself can be sexually transmitted and cause weeks of painful genital symptoms. So even if you don't eat fish and your non-vegetarian lover assures you that they properly cooked and handled their fish, you personally may not be safe. The toxin is actually transmitted. Then there's all sorts of really rare fish toxins that can cause our muscles to break down. This poor person went to bed totally fine after eating some salmon, waked up, couldn't stand, hold a cup of coffee. Lots of toxins, none of which affected by cooking. So one would never eat poisonous pufferfish if they were smart, but what if it was mislabeled as monkfish like it was in Chicago, leading to tetrodotoxin poisoning? This poor woman ate some mackerel, it literally just dropped. And this is actually the most common cause of fish-borne food poisoning, called scombroid poisoning. When flesh decomposes, when fish starts spoiling, these chemicals are produced that are released even when the fish still tastes and smells perfectly fine. And it can cause this most common cause of food poisoning from fish. The chemicals have names like putrescine and cadaverine. This is actually that's actually what's used to train the corpse sniffing dogs, actually. But it's not just fish. When all carcasses rot, as you can see, all these different types of meat products, you get these decaying flesh compounds, including spermine, interestingly, which gives the characteristic semen odor. But it depends on what kind of bacteria is really involved in the putrefaction process. Fact or fiction? Cell phones can give you brain cancer. Brain tumor incidence has been increasing over the last 25 years. Cell phones have anything to do with it? Who says cell phones increase brain cancer risk? Raise your hand. Yes, fact. Who says no, that's fiction? And the answer is fact. From the major review in the International Journal of Oncology published last year, if you do not use cell phones, your lifelong risk of getting brain tumor is 1 in 167. If you do use cell phones, your risk is still really small, but it goes up to 1 in 128. Still less than a 1% chance you're ever going to get a brain tumor. But I encourage people to use the speakerphone option, the little headsets, and to minimize the amount that children use them. But if I can just get everyone who's currently standing up to sit down, I'll get just you back up for the next round. I just want to put this risk in context. And that is, children that eat a single hot dog a week have 7 times more likely to get a brain tumor than using a cell phone every single day. And in fact, one serving of these cured meats every week increases the risk of childhood leukemia by 900%. Diet is the #1 cause of cancer. Diet is the #1 cause of cancer. Therefore, cancer is a preventable disease, but it does require major lifestyle changes. Only 5 to 10% of cancer risk is from your genes, from your family history. The other 90 to 95% of risk comes to what we expose our bodies to. Of that 90 to 95% here in the United States, tobacco is about 1/4 of the risk. And particularly among people with AIDS, there's a number of infectious causes of cancer. But if you combine obesity and alcohol into diet, you can see that the majority of risk really in the United States is diet-related. And if you don't have AIDS, and if you don't smoke, nearly your entire cancer risk is from diet, and everything else, the cell phones, the x-rays, the air pollution, all fits in to that 10 to 15%. Right? So for non-smokers, cancer risk is almost entirely diet. Anything about our diet in particular? From a massive new study in Canada last year, total meat consumption directly related not only to stomach, colon, and rectal cancer, which comes in contact with the meat, but also pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate, testicular, kidney, bladder, and more, leukemia as well. 60,000 Americans every year, for example, come down with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Blood cancer goes on to kill about 1/3 of its victims. Significant rise in incidence in recent decades. not really sure why. Some have suspected exposure to the bovine leukemia virus, which causes very similar cancers in cattle and infects the majority of herds in this country and the majority of people. 74% of people test positive for bovine leukemia virus. Why? From exposure to meat and dairy products. But it may not just be eating animal products, though. Those that handle raw meat for a living actually come down with unpleasant conditions with names like contagious pustular dermatitis. And there's actually a well-defined medical condition known as butcher's warts, which affects those that handle raw meat, including fish and chicken, for a living. In fact, even the wives of butchers have significantly elevated cervical cancer risk, which is a cancer which we know is associated with wart virus exposure. So, first study of its kind, researchers looked at farmed animal exposure as a risk factor for human non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. To be fair, though, there's also feline leukemia virus. And you know, our children are more likely to have close contact with a family dog or other companion animal than with a farm animal. So, in terms of our risk of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, animal contact, harmful, harmless, or helpful? Let's get everyone up to answer this question. And no matter how this comes out, remember, I am just the messenger. Okay, first off, cow contact. Does this cow contact increase your risk of cancer? Raise your hand. Who thinks it does not increase your risk of cancer? Anyone thinks it's protective against cancer? Increases your risk of cancer. What about pig contact? Who thinks it increases your risk of cancer? Who thinks it does nothing to your risk of cancer? That's really...
Thank God for the kitty thing.
Thank God for the kitty thing. So, but protective against cancer. Not even if you don't have a cat now, but had a cat in the past, you have a significantly lower likelihood of coming down with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now for you dog people. Canine companionship. Who thinks having a dog increases your risk of cancer? Who thinks having a dog has nothing to do with your risk of cancer? Who thinks having a dog decreases your risk of cancer? Having a dog decreases your risk of cancer. Good dog. Oh, I would have wiped out the room with a cat question. All right, what about other companion animals like corn-loving hamsters, rodents in the house? Who says harmful? Who says harmless? Who says helpful? And the answer is helpful. Decreases your risk of cancer.